Okay, thank you very much, Cath, for joining. For anybody who's unaware, my name's Anthony Bennett. I'm from Zync Digital, and we're joined by our wonderful team. We are a digital marketing agency working exclusively with credit unions and social enterprises, and also kind of all sorts of ethical lenders. I'm delighted to be joined today by Cath Wohlers, who's LIAISE Manager at the illegal money lending team, who heads up the Stop Loan Sharks kind of division. But Cath, I'd love to hear more about yourself for anybody listening, and the work that Stop Loan Sharks do.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. So my name is Cath Wohlers. I am the LIAISE Manager, as it was correctly described. So what that basically means is I head up the part of the illegal money lending team that doesn't do enforcement. So we do all the awareness raising, the victim support, witness support, lots of research as to why people would go to loan sharks in the first place to try and stop that journey. But most importantly, probably in this arena, we look at a prevent message. So what can we do to make sure people have access to safe, affordable credit, to savings, to a little bit of financial resilience, as well as the skills and knowledge to avoid cunning loan sharks who may appear on their radar if they start looking for money.
Spot on. Well, I'll hand over to Holly and Andrea, who are going to ask a few questions about the work you guys do. Yeah, guys, fire away.
Cool. So hi, Cath, I'm Holly. I think we're just going to start off with just asking you to tell us a bit about the illegal money lending team and the work that you do with stopping loan sharks.
So like I say, we are primarily an enforcement team. So we are a trading standards team. It's trading standards legislation we enforce, funded via Treasury to Birmingham City Council, but we cover the whole of England. So the majority of the staff, about 30 of the staff, are investigators. And what they do is they go out and try and lock up the bad guys. So it's about trying to identify loan sharks through intelligence that comes in from communities and third-party agencies. It's about trying to talk to people and get them to trust us enough to give us their information and tell us what's going on. And then it's building a case to get a warrant against the loan sharks to go and search their premises, their property, looking for evidence of illegal lending, which we can then present to the courts. As well as that, we look at proceeds of crime. So as well as trying to arrest the bad guys and get them locked up, we take away their shiny things. And we make sure that their criminal benefit is not there anymore for them to enjoy. We get a proportion of that money back, and we like to put that back into the community in terms of projects that help raise awareness of this issue and of the alternatives that are available. So it's like a whole team approach. There is an enforcement angle to what we do, but as well, we're much more about the people and communities that this crime affects and how we can influence their lives for the better.
Sure.
Great. Hi, Cath. I'm Andrea. So why do people turn to loan sharks in the first place?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think there's a myriad of reasons, to be honest. There's probably a PhD in that question alone. And I think it's about lots of things. So some of it's about lack of access to credit. So if nobody can lend you money, because as we know, any legitimate credit company has to do an affordability check before they can lend you money. And there are people who will fail that affordability check no matter who they go to. So there is definitely a space in the market, if you like, for loan sharks there, because they don't do affordability checks. They don't care if you can pay them back. We did some press recently with a lady who was earning £1,088 a month, and the loan shark was taking £900 of that. Didn't care if she could pay her rent, didn't care if she could feed the kids, no affordability check, will lend anybody money, because what they then do is make sure that they are your priority debt and they are the ones that you will pay above and beyond anybody else. So there's definitely kind of people who can't access mainstream credit who go to loan sharks, but a lot of people could access mainstream credit. And the reason they end up with a loan shark is they believe this person is their friend. So 50% of those we supported last year thought they were borrowing from a mate. Someone at the school gates, someone they worked with, someone down the pub, and they thought that's who they were borrowing money from. So they haven't tried to get credit from somewhere else. It's a loan between friends. And I think it's appealing because, there's no paperwork, there's no credit check. Quite often, the lender won't even mention interest at the time the loan's taken out. It's only much further down the line that comes into play. So you can see how easy it is for people to get caught in the trap.
Sure. Obviously, you just mentioned sort of it's a trap and it's quite high repayments, but what else makes sort of loan sharks so dangerous?
I think there's two big reasons. I think the first is financial, absolutely. So the lady I just mentioned who was handing £900 a month over to the loan shark, she borrowed in total about £2,500 in really small loans, kind of £100 here, 50 quid there, £200 there. When we worked it out, she borrowed about £2,500. She paid back £26,000. on that loan, and the loan shark said she owed another 16 at that time.
Mhm.
And that's the sort of interest rates we're talking about. That's not even that shocking to me in my world. That's fairly standard loan shark behaviour. So that obviously then has a massive impact, because people don't pay their rent, their mortgage, their council tax, and they can end up in all heaps of legitimate credit problems as a result. I think as well, though, the bigger one almost is the mental health impact it has on people. So loan sharks are very clever at isolating people. They chip away at their self-esteem. They make them believe this is something they deserve to have happen to them. So it's very much that kind of idea of, you know, well, I lent you money when no one else would. I helped you out. You owe me. I own you almost. And because people sometimes don't tell partners about this loan, they feel stupid, they feel embarrassed, they feel shame. It just means that they end up isolated for a period of time when the loan shark is on their mind all the time, in their mobile phone, 100 text messages a day, waking up to it, trying to take a different route to school so you don't get shouted at when you've got the kids with you. And it has such a big impact on people's lives that we do, unfortunately, see people pushed to the brink of suicide because of somebody else's greed. So while the financial impact is massive, I think the mental health impact's even bigger.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think that the work like the legal money lending team does, you think it's been increased in the past few years?
It's really hard to say, because it takes people about 3 years to report. It's really hard to kind of say, has COVID had an impact? Has the, you know, has cost of living had an impact? And it's never kind of linear from that. So last year, 1 in 5 of the victims we helped said that COVID had an impact on them borrowing from the loan shark. I don't think we've seen the impact of the cost of living yet in terms of what's coming through our doors. The thing that we have seen, though, is that we always ask people, what were you borrowing for? What was the money for? Now, historically, that's always been everyday living expenses, but it's been one-offs. So it's been school uniform, white goods, the car tyre that burst on the way to work. What we've seen this year is people borrowing from loan sharks for food and fuel. And that's something we haven't really seen before. So I think there is definitely a shift, which means it is affecting a lot more people. There was a Centre for Social Justice report out last year, which estimated 1.08 million people in England using loan sharks. That's 2% of the population. And that's gone up threefold from the last time there was an estimate 10 years ago. So it's definitely there. It's in every community, and it has a big impact on people's lives.
How are you finding that these loan sharks are sort of targeting people or going about finding people to scam?
Yeah, that's changed as well. When I started, I've been doing this job 15 years. And when I started, you could almost pick a map and draw a loop around a loan shark's patch. And they were the people they lent to. And they knew them from school gates. They knew them at work. They went to the pub. You know, they were just known on the estate as the person that you lent money from. Quite often people would borrow 10 years after leaving school, but they knew them because they went to school with them. And that's definitely changed. So we've seen it shift online. So we've seen lenders on social media. We've prosecuted someone who was operating on Snapchat and actually paid an influencer to recommend him to students as a way of borrowing money. And because of that, and it's done by bank transfer, it gives them a much bigger geographical reach. So he was in Doncaster and he had victims in Berkshire and London and all over the place because he didn't have to see them to interact with them. It was all done on Snapchat and it was all done via bank transfer. And we're seeing that more and more. So we see it with WhatsApp groups in certain communities. So you might be Zimbabwean, you might be working in the UK, and there's a WhatsApp group of people who all come from the same bit of Zimbabwe, and that's how they keep in touch. And within that, there will be a lender, and they will lend money to people. And the way they then control the group is through this kind of shame. So I'd love to lend you money, but Tracy hasn't paid me back this week, so unfortunately I can't. And that's your community, that's your link back home. Or the threat is telling the family back home that yes, you're working in the UK, but you're bringing the family name into disrepute because you're not paying your way. And that has a massive impact on people as well. So I think sometimes it's people who are just known in the community. Sometimes they actively scout for people online. But I do think it has shifted. And I think the sort of days of a loan shark having a patch that we could draw a nice circle around are probably gone.
And how can they avoid loan sharks?
So the actual criminal offence that loan sharks commit is lending money without authorisation from the Financial Conduct Authority. So you want to lend money as a business, you've got to go to the FCA, you've got to get permission, basically. So if you want to avoid a loan shark, check whoever is lending you money has permission from the FCA. You can look, it's a public register, you can look online and you can look by the person's name or the company name and you can check they're authorised. That doesn't help, however, if you think you're borrowing from a mate, because you wouldn't expect a mate to be authorised by the FCA. So then I think it is a little bit of kind of almost traditional trading standards advice of buyer beware. So, you know, if it looks too good to be true, it probably is. If this is somebody that, you know them from work, you don't know what their partner does for a living, you don't know what their birthday is, you're not quite sure, you know, how old their kids are, why would they lend you money? Because you're a flight risk if you might not pay them back. If it's someone you've known 20 years, you were bridesmaid at their wedding, they're godmother to your child, you meet for coffee every Tuesday, that's probably okay. And they wouldn't charge you interest either. So the two questions we always say to someone who thinks they're borrowing from a friend is, does this person lend lots of people money? And are they charging you interest? And if you can answer yes to those two questions, that's possibly a loan shark. One of the biggest telltale signs as well is a loan without paperwork. Any legitimate lender gives you paperwork for a loan. They have to, or the loan's not enforceable. And it tells you all sorts of things like how much interest you're paying, what an early repayment charge is, what happens if you miss a payment, and so on. Loan sharks don't bother with paperwork. It's all word of mouth, a handshake and a WhatsApp message, and that's it. So I think that's where to beware. It's in that kind of informal lending setting that loan sharks can thrive.
And if someone found themselves sort of in that situation, or knew someone in that situation, how would they sort of go about reporting it? Like, what should they do about it?
So we are the team that would take that information from them. We have a 24-hour hotline, which is 7 days a week, 365 days of the year, which is 0300 555 2222. And that's always answered by a member of the team. We don't use call centres. We don't outsource it. It's one of us that will answer the phone. As well as that, we've got live chat on our website, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, which is stoploansharks.co.uk. But I would say as well, it's just about having that conversation. So when you ring up, you will be asked your name. If you choose not to give us your name, you won't be asked again. That's absolutely fine. We take that. If you tell us you want to be called Jane for the duration of the call, we'll call you Jane. That's not a problem at all. And I think sometimes people, because the loan shark isolates them, they get trapped in their heads about how scary it is to report a loan shark. Whereas actually, just have the conversation with us. Let us tell you what support is available to you. Let us tell you what your options are, talk you through them, and then you make a decision. It's not about us doing things to you or on your behalf. You get to make that decision about what happens next. Do you want to talk to us on the record? Do you not want to talk to us on the record? Your call. Sometimes people will ring up and say, no, that's not for me, and phone back in 6 months because it's taken them that long to get their head around the idea of reporting it. That's fine too. We don't put pressure on anybody. It's just about that conversation to say, these are your options, these are your choices, this is what you can do.
Yeah, in line with the financial crisis, the living crisis, is there any advice you would give to people to manage their money better so they won't fall into those traps?
Yeah, it's a really good question, isn't it? I think it's hard at the moment. You know, obviously it's hard for people, but I think one of the big things that we see is people borrowing from loan sharks to get out of debt. So people who will go to a loan shark because they've had a bailiff turn up at their house, or they've had someone knocking on the door and they've had an eviction notice, or they've got court proceedings pending. And maybe they've buried their head in the sand a little bit to that point, and then something happens and they panic. And they think they've got to go out and get £3,000 immediately, so they go and borrow it from a loan shark. Whereas actually, if people can engage with those that they owe money to, most of them want to help. They want to help you repay it. They'll agree smaller amounts. They'll look at debt management plans. They will try and work with you to make that affordable and, you know, workable for you, because it benefits them at the end of the day to get a little bit of money coming back in regularly than nothing at all. So I think it is just about, you know, having those conversations and trying not to borrow more money to get out of debt. That's one of the big things we would say to people at the moment.
Sure, that makes sense. And finally, I just wanted to ask, sort of, how do you work with the victims that have been affected by loan sharks, and what sort of support do Stop Loan Sharks offer them?
So what we do is we will look and try and tailor what we do to that person. Some people don't need us. Some people, once they've reported the loan shark, they're happy. That's it. Some people need to be on the phone 2 hours a day to start with, because they are scared. They are worried they've done the wrong thing. They want to know what happens next. They want to know if the person's going to find out they've reported it. That's fine too. We all carry a caseload of victims, but we make sure that if someone needs that level of support, it's there for them. We will refer them on for other things. So if they need counselling, or if they need debt advice, or if we think they would benefit from a visit to their GP even, we will help facilitate those things to happen. But really, we are a friendly voice at the end of the phone. So my team, we're not investigators. We've all got backgrounds in debt advice, housing, counselling, safeguarding. We're people. And we are about making sure that person is okay, is safe. one of the things I always say is, I've never had anyone say to me, I wish I hadn't got involved with you people. I wish I hadn't spoken to the illegal money lending team. I've had loads of people say, I wish I'd spoken to you people 2 years earlier. It would have saved me a lot of money and a lot of heartache. And that's a really key thing for us. I think once people talk to us, we're really good at what we do, but actually getting people to talk to us in the first place, that's what's really hard.
Spot on, Cath. I mean, some of the things you highlighted just in terms of the human impact, and, you'd never think that, it could drive people to potential suicide, but you certainly can imagine how once a situation arises, it deepens and gets worse. I mean, something that you touched on as well is obviously the rise of in prominence of social media, how loan sharks have tended to adapt that. Something that we do on our side is try to raise awareness of the alternatives, which I alluded to earlier, credit unions, community banks, and kind of ethical lenders. Just in your own words, if possible, Cath, if you could maybe describe what those organisations do for us.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I'm a massive advocate for credit unions, community banks, ethical lenders, because I think they are the place that people need to borrow money from, and they're the place where people should save as well. And the reason for that is very simple. Their interest rate is capped by legislation. They cannot charge more than a certain amount of interest. And as well as that, though, they tend to lend money to people who maybe loan sharks would prey on. It tends to be maybe your more vulnerable people. So credit unions will give you a loan of £500, £200, which maybe the banks wouldn't want to lend to £500 because it's not worth their while doing that. But that's credit unions' bread and butter. That's credit unions' everyday loans that go out. So I think it's about that. It's about the fact that this is the section of society, the cohort of people at risk of using loan sharks is the credit union, community bank, ethical lenders cohort of people as well. But the biggest thing I think is it's not computer says no. It's how can we help you? What do you need today? What can we do for you? And if we can't lend you £500, maybe we can lend you £100, and we can look at you building up a credit rating with us and a relationship with us. That means next time we can lend you a bit more. What can we do together? Can we look at maximising your income? Can we look at have you had a benefits check? What else can we do to help? And I think that's the big thing. You can go onto a search engine, you can go onto an online bank, and you can put in, and it just says no. We don't want you, basically. We don't want your business. Whereas credit unions work with people as individuals. And I think that's the real strength of this sector. It's the workarounds they find. It's the help they provide. It's the way they bend over backwards to try and help people, rather than just being a bit, computer says no, sorry, goodbye.
Mm.
Hi, Cath. I'm Pooja. So you kind of touched on sort of aspects that make credit unions so unique and special. So is there anything else that you think that credit unions are sort of, or sets them apart from things like high street banks, for example?
I think as well, the fact that they are of the community that they serve, the fact that the common bond is restricted, which I know, is a pain in the bum for a lot of credit unions and community banks, but that actually means, you can have a brand that is local, you can be known locally, you can appear locally. I'm involved with a credit union in Liverpool, and they do pop-ups all over the place. They're visible, they're known, people see them on the high street, and they are kind of in and of that community. It's local people helping local people. It's local people saving, it's local people borrowing, it's local people who work there and who run it. So I think the idea of the common bond as well is something else that gives credit unions quite a unique factor in this space.
Absolutely right. Spot on. I couldn't agree more. So what I was going to ask as well, Cath, is obviously, credit unions and community banks are that kind of ethical alternative. So how do you guys at the illegal money lending team work with credit unions in the UK then?
So we do a lot of work with credit unions. I have one officer who is dedicated to working with credit unions, and we look at joint projects. So in the past, we've continually run something called Savings Incentive, which is where we find a cohort who are at risk of using a loan shark, whether that's on postcode, because we've removed a loan shark from that area, whether it's on areas of deprivation, particular industries where people might work, or whatever else. And then we try and get people in that cohort saving with the credit union. And the deal is you save, you get £25 after 3 months from us, which is proceeds of crime money from a loan shark, just as an incentive to save. And we've done some analysis over the last 12 months about what actually happens to those people. And an awful lot of them carry on saving. They don't take £25 and run, which is one of our fears. They do become a proper, fully fledged credit union member, and a portion go on to take out loans. And of those that have gone on to take out loans, the default rate's really low. So these are people who we want in credit unions. These are people credit unions need to thrive. And we're kind of introducing them in a way that means hopefully we get in before the loan sharks get to them. And they've got this alternative, this place they can go to have those conversations and get that support. So that's one of the ways we do. We've done a lot of promotion with credit unions. So we've developed an animation about what a credit union is, community bank is, because I think that's one of the biggest problems the sector has, its recognition. And we've distributed that all across the country. We do sort of campaigns on social media with different credit unions. We've done various other projects around specific things, like we did with Communities First in York. We did a challenge cup with a load of high schools where they sent a team in for the day and they had a finance competition, and there was a winning team at the end of it who got the cup, all done with the credit union. And there was lots of information being passed to the young people to take home and into the wider community. With Just Credit Union in Shropshire, we do an awful lot of work in schools. So we've got a great big shark mascot called Sid the Shark. We've actually got 8 of the flipping things, and two Glenda the Lenders as well for equal opportunities. And they go into schools. Kids love them. We hate them, especially in July when it's really warm, because you feel like you're going to faint in front of an assembly of 500 school kids. But it's a great way of just getting a message across, just starting to talk to children about money. You know, where does money come from? Why do we need money? How do we keep money safe? And I think all of the work that they do around there is just brilliant. But, you know, I think as well what we're quite good at is we listen to credit unions. So we sort of say to them, what are your concerns? We did this last year and they came back with gambling. You know, they said they've seen gambling go up significantly, problem gambling go up significantly during the pandemic, and then it didn't seem to be coming back down again. So we put on some sessions with GamCare, colleagues at GamCare, looking at this and looking at, you know, what is problem gambling? Where is that line between okay gambling and problem gambling? And what can credit unions, community banks do about that as well? But we're here, basically. We are a resource. You know, we have a little bit of funding available through proceeds of crime, but we also have a kind of unique position in that we work with every single credit union in England, or we try to, so we can pick best practice and we can see what works in different places as well.
Brilliant.
So I guess for any sort of credit unions that might be listening out there, what would you say it's like, or why would you say it's in particular for credit unions, it's important for them to sort of raise awareness for loan sharks? So
I think quite often our customers are your customers, unfortunately. You know, we did a warrant a couple of weeks ago. I can't say where yet because it's not the public domain, but we did a warrant a couple of weeks ago, and we know that the vast majority of his victims were members of the credit union. And actually looking at their credit union accounts, you couldn't see anything wrong with them. They weren't massively in arrears. Some of them had savings. So I think, you know, our people are your people, and that's why it's really important. We're trying to develop some things at the moment where we can look at open banking and we can see telltale patterns that might suggest someone's borrowing from a loan shark. And we're trying to develop some training around that and some information around that, so that a loans officer sitting down with somebody who sees, you know, you've had £500 come in from this person and you've paid them £200 a month for 10 months. What's going on there? You know, and it says loan as the transaction reference, and you've missed other payments, but you've never missed that payment. And they might just trigger something in them to ask a question and to say, you know, I think you might be in trouble with a loan shark. I know someone who can help you. If you want me to get them on the phone, we can have a chat with them together. So I think, you know, in terms of us being able to access people, credit unions are really important, people who are maybe already in the grasp of a loan shark. But I think as well, you know, we're here to help, and we're here to try and grow credit unions, because the bigger, bolder, braver the credit union sector is, that's only a good thing for us in terms of trying to stop loan sharks.
Perfect. I mean, do you think there's anywhere else then, Cath, say if anybody is worried about finances or even loan sharks, or is there anywhere else that people could go to if they're worried about the finances?
I think debt advice is a big one for us. They're a really, really key partner because, you know, quite often, like I say, the loan shark doesn't do the affordability check. So you're in all sorts of legitimate credit debt, you know, with it, rent arrears or whatever else. And we've seen people, you know, on the brink of eviction or mortgage repossession at the point at which they've come to us. So I think, you know, debt advice is a really big one for us. And in terms for people just to get that information early, the quicker you get in with them, the easier it is for them to help you. So, you know, that's the sort of two sides for us, I think, is the debt advice and the credit unions for savings and loans, and then debt advice for information about any problems they've got at the moment.
So having done like quite a lot of work within like the ethical lending sector, what would you say is sort of the biggest challenge facing credit unions at the moment?
See, if you'd asked me 6 months ago, I probably would have said recognition. I'd have said it's this thing of, you know, not everybody knows what a credit union is. I think, you know, it's a really hard marketing thing to do for you guys, because not all credit unions are different, aren't they? So you can't say credit unions, we do this, this, and this, because that one won't, and that one will do something else that it wants publicising. And that's brilliant because they're responding to local need, but it makes marketing them nationally really difficult to do. So I think a kind of national profile awareness raising would have been my answer 6 months ago. But right now, I think it's declines. I think it's people going to credit unions who need loans and they're not getting them because the affordability check says this person cannot afford it because they're paying a lot more on their heating than they were 12 months ago. They're paying a lot more for their food than they were 12 months ago. And people who before would have been prime, to be lent to people have now slipped under to the, I don't think we could do that. And I think it's really hard for credit unions as well to judge affordability, because who knows where prices goes next. Someone could afford a loan now, but if they're taking a loan for 2 years and, energy prices go up in April and then maybe next October again, or food prices continue to go up at 6% inflation, 10% inflation, maybe halfway through the loan, it's not affordable anymore. So I think credit unions are really struggling at the moment in the world of declines, affordability, and actually who is safe to lend to it and who is it not to, and what do you do with those who it's not safe to lend to anymore?
Mm-hmm. I think as well, talking about challenges and things like that, oftentimes when we tell people, let's say of younger generations, about what credit unions are, more often than not, the question that comes back is, okay, great, it sounds fantastic, but I need to know more about it, or I don't know what it is. Do you think that there's anything credit unions can do to appeal to younger generations, maybe?
Yeah, I think, and this is just a personal view, but I think as well that sometimes us older people, I speak for myself, not you guys there, we tend to misjudge younger people. And I think one of the big things when I'm talking to kind of late teens, early 20s, one of the big things is ethics. I think they're a much more ethical generation than mine were, certainly. And I think, the credit unions could play on that so much more with that generation, this idea that this is the right thing to do. You're not giving your money to a big faceless organization who makes millions. You're giving your money to a local organization. It's just as safe there as it would be with the big guys. But actually what that enables that organization to do is lend these people money and to do this project and employ this community development worker to put a pop-up shop over here. And I think that's probably an angle they could play on a little bit more. We're looking at the moment, I'm going to sound old now, we had a grime video produced about illegal lending by a group of kids in Solihull. It's amazing. It's one of the best things I've ever seen. And we're going to ask them to do one about credit unions as well, because I just think as well, you've got to speak the language, haven't you? I ashamed myself the other day on a meeting talking about TikTok, and I started talking about dueling instead of duetting, which apparently isn't a thing because it's just, I don't do TikTok, but they do. So let's let them do it rather than me attempting to do TikTok very badly. Let's let them do it. One of the things we've done at work is we've got digital marketing apprentice in, and she's fabulous because she gets it. She lives it, she breathes it. It's her world, and that's far, far better than trying to get someone else. And I think credit unions could look at that as well, getting interns in, working with local universities to do projects, and actually trying to make the most of some of the emerging medias as they come out.
Brilliant.
Do you think that there is anything sort of credit unions could do more to sort of try and reach more people?
National advertising would always be nice, wouldn't it? But I don't know how you do it with the differences that exist in the sector. I think it is really, really tricky. I think it's just fighting the good fight and plugging away at it, really, isn't it? And I think, it's trying to find a champion. It's trying to find, people who are there. We do some work with Martin Sheen, who is very well known and talks about APR in a meaningful way, because you do still get people who will balk at the idea of 42%. But actually, when you look at what you pay per £100, it's nothing. It's perfectly affordable. It's entirely reasonable, especially at the higher risk cohort that might be being lent to. And I think it's about that. Maybe it's about trying to find champions to hang your hat on. You get Loose Women talking about credit unions or something like that. That'd be good, wouldn't it? Or Steph's Pat Lunch or something like that. It's just trying to get a message across. But I think as well, all people can do locally is just keep plugging away and get involved with local groups, which they do incredibly well, and try and service that local need.
Absolutely, Cath. No, that's fantastic. I think just to kind of finalise then, if you are listening to this by chance and you think that you might know somebody who is at risk of being preyed on by a loan shark or anything like that at all, please do get in touch with the illegal money lending team. We'll kind of always be posting links to their social medias, their websites, etc. And if you're a credit union or community bank and looking to kind of increase awareness, please do get in touch with us as well. What's a podcast? That's a plug at the end. But no, Cath, that's fantastic. That's really, really good. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. Thanks for having us on.